Hello, and welcome back to Practically Political. It is great to have you with us. It is October 2nd, 2025. I am pleased, as always, to be joined by my partners, Ashley Davis, Kurt Bardella. Wow, there's always stuff to talk about, but whew, these days, I wish we had 3 hours. But obviously, I think we should start with the government shutdown. And I just have to say that once again, it shows how inept the government is that we can't, they can't agree on some pretty basic stuff. I think in the end, obviously, there's the blame game, and I'll get into the messaging in a second. But one thing that is guaranteed is that both parties will be held in lower esteem, if that's possible, by the American public. And I think the Democrats should have been saying healthcare, 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 healthcare for the past month, but as usual, their messaging is terrible. I'm hearing all the usual things about corruption and inflation and all this stuff, but it's not a succinct message. And I don't think it was advanced strongly enough and early enough. I think the Republicans are quite confident. They definitely have a stride in their step. Now, whether this is hubris, we will find out. But right now, it is definitely a bleep show. And I think the American public, as always, will be a loser. Though I have to say, I think government shutdowns, in terms of how impactful they are overrated because I think it's only about a third of the government that's actually affected. And I think about 70% of the workers actually stay on the job. So I think it's a little become a little melodramatic, which is maybe why what's happening. But this is the first one since 2018. So who knows what's going to happen? Who knows how long it's going to last? I think a compromise would be to agree on the Obamacare subsidies, but perhaps lower the ceiling for when people may qualify for them, because that's one of the strong arguments is that you can earn 400 or whatever percent of the poverty line and still qualify, and that there are subsidies to the insurance companies. But anyway, there's my spiel. What say you, Kurt?
This is one of those shutdowns where it's almost as if both sides kind of wanted it to happen for different reasons. Democrats wanted to have the shutdown so they could appease their base and show that they're fighting finally, I guess, which is an idiotic reason, in my opinion, to go into a shutdown situation. Um, Republicans, I think Trump wanted the shutdown because one, they think no one's going to give a crap really. The average person is not going to be impacted by this shutdown most likely, so it doesn't matter. Two, it gives them a tremendous amount of executive authority to, with Congress sidelining themselves, the executive branch can do whatever it wants. It expands the president's power, and he gets to wield it right now, kind of in an unlimited way. And they're all for that. So the White House thinks they get the benefit of all this extra power and an ability perhaps to dramatically reduce the federal workforce permanently, but really no political blowback for that. Democrats, the uphill climb that they have is they're trying to solve a problem that hasn't actually materialized yet. They are trying to say there's going to be a healthcare crisis if all the things that were in Build Back Better come to fruition. They're trying to say that your premiums will go up, healthcare will get more expensive, but it hasn't happened yet. The crisis hasn't happened yet. So the average person isn't going to go, yeah, shut down the government. We're fine with that because you're trying to stave off something preventatively. Most people don't care about this stuff or realize these things until they actually like happen, and then it becomes a political problem that creates the impetus for action. I think Democrats are once again putting themselves in a position where they're going to end up surrendering. They're going to end up capitulating with very little to show for it, and they'll look idiotic.
Yeah, I mean, Kurt, I believe in a lot of that. First of all, I was looking today. This is the 22nd shutdown in the last 50 years. I mean, I just personally think it's a horrible way to legislate. I mean, I think it's completely ridiculous that we're in the situation that we're in on both sides. I feel that the Republicans at least feel that they have the upper say in this message. I just don't think I just don't think it's good for anybody. However, what I thought was interesting, let's just talk about the votes here real quick. So we had two Democrats and one Republican that voted with the, I'm sorry, two Democrats, one independent that voted with the Republicans. So we need 5 more. And you see people like Gary Peters, Gene Shaheen, who both are up for reelection, Hassan. There were a couple others that probably start peeling off at some point, and that's where Thune probably gets to the 60, I would think. There's a general consensus around here that this is stops next week. I do think it's interesting. The Senate's back in tomorrow. It's out today. And then they're not gonna be in most likely all weekend. So there's not like a rush of urgency. And the House, I don't
They're
think it
not even
matters.
here. They
Well,
haven't been here all
they're
week.
in recess and they're coming back on Monday, but they're not gonna vote on anything because there's no they're not changing this extension. I mean, I think it's unless there's some huge issue that happens, the 7-week extension is the only thing Republicans are gonna give up. Obviously, we've heard this a million times. Chuck Schumer and others voted for this in March. But I think, Kurt, you're exactly right. Of these subsidies don't expire by the end of the year, till the end of the year, and I think that there's not a crisis right now. I think that 100%, Dave, that there will be some sort of compromise, and you're probably exactly right with how you framed it, where they'll extend, but it will be different cap levels. But uh, I think that that will all be done in a year-end package, and and it's just there. I don't think Thune moves off of his position of we're not gonna negotiate policy in this extension.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, Republicans, they feel like they have the high ground. So there's really little incentive for them to give Democrats anything other than to say, like, listen, we're not even going to talk about this until you pass a clean CR. Like, we're just not going to do it.
Yeah, that's why it's like Speaker was like, "Why am I bringing my people back and paying for them to come back to look at each other when we passed our bill?" And that's the other thing that's a little different this time is Republicans actually did pass this bill.
Well, and also another thing too, all the other this is going for Republicans, the other shutdowns have been over efforts to reduce spending. This is the first time we have is because they want to increase spending. Now, you can argue the merits on that, right or wrong, but I think that that is a big factor. And my prediction is that it's going to drag on for a few weeks, and then if the Democrats don't fold, and this is yet another example of how Chuck Schumer's sell-by date has long passed. He should have followed Nancy Pelosi, known when to retire. But on the other side, it used to be just lies that, okay, maybe they're 70 or 80% false, but they're almost 100% false now. And JD Vance was saying the big point is, oh, this is just a plan to spend hundreds of billions of dollars giving health care to illegal aliens, as he puts it. Well, and what his prime example is, well, if you go to the hospital, you might wait longer because there's an illegal immigrant in front of you. Well, notice he doesn't say the emergency room, which is actually what he's talking about, because by law, emergency rooms can't deny care to anyone. You can't check someone's citizenship when they show up in the emergency room. So that's ridiculous. And that's what he's getting at, is that there is a provision to reimburse rural hospitals, which by the way are in red states. 60% of this will affect red states. But I think your point is very salient, Kurt, that it's much harder to have a debate about something that hasn't happened yet. So I think again, it's just going to be another ramp up of divisiveness, polarization, another ramp down in America's faith in government. But the whole
I
thing
think
is
I
very
just think the
disturbing.
Democrats come off looking so bad in all these because they just look weak. I mean, I have seen no evidence to this point that Democrats can successfully win a messaging war against the Republicans. I see no evidence of that at all anywhere. And for them to engage in really what ultimately is a test of what is your threshold and tolerance for pain, right? Whoever has the highest threshold usually wins this kind of stare down. Democrats don't have a high threshold or tolerance for pain. They almost immediately fold, and there is no actual realistic objective here. Like, what is an actual attainable win for Democrats? And if you ask 5 different Democrats, you would get 5 different answers. The one answer they might say is, well, an extension of the Obamacare subsidies. Yeah, that's not going to happen. That's not attainable. So that's really not realistic on the table. So what is a win that lets you come back to the table, get this budget done, and the shutdown and save face? The answer is there is none. There is no win available for the Democrats, which is why going through this exercise is politically stupid on their part. And they're going to come off looking bad, weak, disorganized, and once again, just another complete abject failure to communicate successfully.
And they, just to build on what you say, the number one rule of negotiating is you can't just have a plan A, but you have to have a plan B. And they don't have that. And on top of that, the Obamacare subsidy extension is estimated to cost about 450 billion over 10 years. And the so-called big beautiful bill was supposed to cut spending, which obviously we know it didn't do. It ballooned it, but it does put another arrow in the Republican quiver, saying, "Hey, we're trying to live by the principles of our bill here." So I
Well,
agree.
I
So
think also,
fail, can they save any face? Is the question.
Kurt, I think also though, in regards to messaging, going back to Dave, what you were saying about the messaging on illegal aliens, without, getting healthcare. Again, this is what this 24-hour news cycle and what we're doing right now has done to us. The talking points are the talking points. And if you're not really paying attention to this every day and you hear that and you want to believe that, that's what you're going to believe, whether it's true or not. And so I think that's just the world. And Trump, as you guys would both agree with me, is a master at this type of messaging, that just throwing things against the wall and when something fits. It's like how many people are talking about right now the probably inappropriate video that was posted, about Schumer and Jeffries. Yeah, I mean, and today he posted it again saying the hat's going to continue to get bigger. But here's on a serious note, because I do think that this is impacting the some American people, and it is something we need to be sensitive about, because October 5th, they'll get a paycheck because that's for the last 2 weeks. And then they'll get the next one is October 20th. And I think that is really the date, because if they're not back by then, and listen, it could go longer, but that October 20th, I think, is like when you lose your next paycheck.
Well, I think
Obviously,
the
you get it
interesting
paid
thing,
back,
this
but
is the first shutdown. Because when you think about what the media ecosystem looked like in 2018 versus now, it's radically different now. In 2018, there was still a pretty unified media, legacy media, establishment media narrative that like Trump was out of his mind, right? I mean, they were pretty lined up against him across the board. Um, from broadcast media to cable media, it wasn't as fractured. Substack didn't even exist, right? Elon Musk did not own Twitter yet. It was just a very different world. And this is the first shutdown where you get to choose your own reality now and go to whatever silo that is, and only be fed a steady dose of things that you will likely only agree with, and not ever hear the other argument, the other side of it. And I think the challenge for Democrats is the Republican side of that space is much bigger and much better at it than the Democrat side. And that is one of the many inherent reasons why almost schematically now they lose these messaging wars, because the Democratic Party simply just does not have the media distribution apparatus to go toe to toe with what the Republicans have built.
No, I think that's very true. Well,